So I supported both your Democratic primary candidacies for governor because I saw you both as really authentic, genuine human beings that were value-driven, that were progressive, that I thought really embraced Massachusetts' role to be a beacon to the rest of the country, not just to be a manager of our current system. We need to go out there and fight for the right for all humans out there, the many, not the few. I also saw that you both had a great deal of experience in the private and public sector, which I don't think was articulated by the media well enough, that you had so many diverse range of experiences. So I guess I feel honored to even ask you both this at the same time, but could you discuss some of the major takeaways you had from running for governor of Massachusetts? What did you learn? Can we look for some overlapping themes here for our state to continue pushing forward?
Go ahead, no, go ahead. You ran first.
Oh, so many lessons. The good hearts of communities, I guess. I know it sounds sappy, but it's really true. When you go spend an evening in, Amesbury or Greenfield or Pittsfield or Roxbury, and you meet people where they are about what they care about, they care. I mean, this image actually in Washington of a kind of deadened public or not being committed to each other, not true, just not true. I mean, maybe occasionally, but man, communities want to help. They want to be vibrant. They want to help each other. They have problems and they want solutions. And it's just that the good hearts were really there. Not always, but a lot. I think I must say, people like you, Tom. I mean, I loved my staff. I had 44 people working for me by the end. Nobody probably over 35. Probably nobody over 30. And boy, people were generous. They just poured their energies hour after hour, day after day, into trying to make the world better and hoping that I could help. It was so wonderful. And I stay in touch with them now, and they're all moving into other ways to help. It was great. The media was a disappointment. I'm sure their job is hard. I'm sure I probably couldn't do better, but their willingness to take the short hit or make a big deal out of a nothing while the big deals don't get attended, it was shocking and not right. I mean, I don't think it was proper. Some journalists sometimes would dig in and explore, and I'm not saying they need to agree with me, but how about asking questions that are authentic? The media approach to kind of, it's like a mousetrap. They're always waiting for you to say this word, and then the trap will spring. Yeah. I thought the ability, the campaign structure, the ability to have debates, to be out there was also pretty exciting. I mean, I had 23 debates, and I was really scared of them, but each one was better than the last, as we really tried to struggle with some issues. So that was probably the good side of the media experience. I don't know what else. I mean, in quality improvement, my professional world, values. It begins with values. If you can't articulate what you want to get done, then you're not going to be able to find a way to do it. And I think in the campaign that was so impressive to me, which is what was square one? What's the talisman? What do you have to touch? And you have to touch your values. For me, it was social justice, equality, compassion in government, taking care of each other as a foundation. And I think that was very orienting, very helpful to me to remind myself and raise that with others.
One of my discoveries was, there is a caricature that the Boston elites run things. Sadly, I discovered that's sort of true. What I mean by that is that there is a community, which is not exclusively Boston-based, of people who think they understand politics and think they have a certain amount of control, and who kind of pick what we're supposed to be interested in. And so, in my particular case, the overarching issue was Trump. Everything was about Trump this, and the attention was Trump, and so everything was measured against that by a certain lead. So in my case, the question was, well, Charlie Baker may not be as good as we want, but we can't actually figure out anything he's doing wrong because he's never answered a public question and no one's ever probed. So we will just focus on Congress. And that was part of the donors group. And I understood that at some level, except that there is a gap between those folks and their attitudes and then the communities that Don is talking about and that I experience, which are these local communities that are experiencing very serious problems with the basics, with affording housing, with having enough money to put food on the table, with knowing where their kids are going to go to school, you know, or maybe college, with healthcare. All of those things which determine the quality of life and which hit the, you know, working class, lower middle class, are not really on the radar of the elites. So they think about national questions or sort of bigger statewide questions. So I felt a certain heartbreak about that because people would say, well, it doesn't matter what happens and Charlie Baker's not so bad. But I knew that it meant that, you know, schools wouldn't be funded properly and busing would cost, and that, you know, I met so many people, very well-intentioned, hardworking people, but, you know, I met several single moms making $25,000 a year trying to support 2 kids, couldn't afford the health care that they were given, couldn't afford the premiums or even the very small payments that they might have to make. So I guess there was this sense of deep difficulty being experienced by many citizens of Massachusetts who did not really have an advocate among the elites, and whether by elite I mean the economic elite or the media elite or the political elite. And on top of that, as much as I appreciated the generosity and good spirit that I encountered, there's also a high level of cynicism about. So for example, you know, most of my race was simply who had more money, and who has more money today, who has more money tomorrow. And here I'm putting out, you know, a comprehensive report on our transition to renewable energy, on women's rights and gender equality, on millennial challenges. None of these were covered in any way. And so if you go into this with this idea that, wow, running for governor is going to get an opportunity to draw attention to core questions, it sometimes is like, you know, bouncing off a windshield, and you say, but these are important questions. And I guess just to wrap up, the other thing I discovered is not only is all politics local, but politics focuses on the very next thing. So many of the things that I was trying to talk about were committing now to transitions in healthcare, to transition to renewable energy, to preparing for a labor market that is undermined by artificial intelligence. And yet, I'd go to a Democratic town committee or other settings, again, very good people, but they couldn't quite absorb. And I think actually, to be honest, I think that had something to do with the relatively advanced age of the average member of a town committee. And they're just not that used to thinking 10, 20, 30 years out. And younger people don't really have an avenue to be engaged, and some of that's deliberate. So I guess the structural challenges that prevent elections from being the full debate on what we want to be and do in the future, I think that was something that I found I expected, but it was worse than I realized, and something that I'm hoping we can, you know, help fix in this kind of show.
It's possible to think of a electoral system that would be more that would have more invitation for the kind of issues Bob's talking about. It would have to be much. My campaign was 605 days long. It's ridiculous.
I did 521.
And when we both know, I mean, the election to me, election cycles should be short and publicly financed. If I spent 70% of my time on the phone or in fundraising endeavors, when here we got, you know, a climate that's cooking, an education system that's letting our kids down, a healthcare system that badly needs repair. That
and no place to live.
No place to live, and we need an electoral system where those issues are what we're talking about. Not would you give me $500? I think that would be much better.
Were there? You've touched on a lot of points. Were there any messages that really resonated with the people that, you know, could be built upon for future movements that we try to build together?
I mean, the short-sightedness is a problem as well. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am wrong about this. I don't know. But I think the message, I hope, would be we're in it together. Yes. I just think that's the message. And if I'm wrong and people don't believe that, then I'm in the wrong endeavor if I'm running for office. We're in it together, and you know, today you're the one giving help. Tomorrow you'll be the one getting it, and we need to restore that ethos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'd like to come back a little bit to what I think is just the extraordinary shift. I read this about you in some other setting, but the way, and I want to ask sort of how we can encourage this, but it talked about the system just being fundamentally focused on the wrong things, healthcare. And just the list that I read was that we need to move from being hospital-centric to patient-centric, moving from revenue growth, just being a target, to value and efficiency. I'm just reading it from fragmentation to teams, and from professional dominance to patient control.
Yeah.
And by the way, as somebody who has been acted upon by doctors who initially didn't seem to care and seeing a real transition, not enough, but a real transition, how do we do that? That's really a fundamental new moral structure.
That's my life. I mean, I agree with what you said.
I guess how can we help you do that? Maybe that would be, how could our community help you?
Well, you're doing it by airing these conversations.
Yeah.
In what you just recited, I have a couple of tweaks. It's wherever you said patient, I would say person. I think we're even in the time since I perhaps wrote that, we're learning a lot more about connecting to the whole person, mm-hmm. and co-producing health with that person. It's not acted upon, it's with. Mm-hmm. I say healthcare treats itself as if it were the host of patients, and we're not. We're the guests of patients in their lives, and I think that's a different power dynamic, different balance of power. The other thing is, it said from hospital to centric to patient centric. Wow. It's actually it's hospital centric to home as the hub. Kaiser Permanente uses that phrase, home as the hub. I love it. There's so much more in this modern era with new technologies, digital health, and just better understandings that you can be with home. You can be with your family and do an awful lot for yourself. That's a much more. It's a more effective system. What can we do? Fight the myths that Tom was asking about. The more is better myth, that the next hospital ward, the next machine holds the answer to your security. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You know, we need to focus our time and attention and money where the health lies, and give up this infatuation with technologies that are really far less effective than you think and far more excess. I think broadening our field of view about who is the healthcare workforce in a way, it's not just doctors and nurses, it's all of us, and this ability to broaden job descriptions and take much better use of the abundance in our communities. That's a mind change. So yeah, let's keep discussing it.
So, looking at 2019 from state level to national level to a lot of your international work, what are you most excited about working on in 2019?
The specific answer for me is the social determinants thing we were talking about before. I gave a speech just last month kind of cataloging what we now know scientifically about the power of social determinants. I don't know if we have time, but I'll give you a quick anecdote. Public health people or people interested in well-being of communities use something called subway maps. A subway map is it's an artifice. You say for each stop on a subway line, what's the life expectancy of the people who live there? And the subway map, for example, the original one is a bus map in Glasgow, Scotland. From one end of Glasgow to the other, the difference in life expectancy was 28 years. 28 years. I just was in New York City a few weeks ago. If you get on the D train, I think it's subway at around 50th Street, Manhattan, you're looking at, or 85th Street, Manhattan, you're looking at a life expectancy about 85 years. It's as long as Japan. When you get to the South Bronx, 165th Street in the South Bronx, the life expectancy is a decade lower. If you look in Chicago, between the Loop and the West End of Chicago, it's a more than a 10-year lifespan difference. These are massive. The statistic that maybe will be a little too wonky for this show, but you've heard of statins.
Yeah.
You know, statins are the drugs you take to lower your blood cholesterol, prevent a heart attack. Statins, we're not totally sure. We think they work. And by work, we mean if you need them and you take a statin for 20 years, you gain 1 day of life for every year you're on it, expected. So 20 years is 21 days of life expectancy change on average, 21 days in 20 years. On the D train in Manhattan, you lose 21 days in 6 seconds on the subway. I mean, the social determinants are monster powerful compared to anything we're doing in healthcare. Nothing in healthcare has the effects we're talking about, a decade of survival. So that's what intrigues me now. How can we get rebalanced so we're focusing energies on ways that actually could make us healthy, and that's a very, very big.
You know, I'd just like to point out, and you probably saw this, that our new Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley, did a commercial that said everything you need to know about the 7th District you can tell from the #1 bus. And she rides it from Cambridge all the way down into Roxbury, and she comments about this life expectancy as she looks out the window. So, you know, I'm very encouraged by that. I think it helped her win in the sense that from a public policy standpoint, what something costs is not necessarily the dollars you pay for it or don't pay for it. It's a much broader concept. Well,
you know, I have to make a political comment here.
Please.
Also, I mean,
we're all about politics.
Well, the #1 agenda in 2019 is to get progressives back in power, and we have a monster in the White House. We have a Senate leadership that is abandoning the country. And we have to stop it, and that unfortunately is politics, and that's very, very high on my screen. At the state level, I continue to feel this state should be setting the pace in what we're talking about. You know, if people aren't doing what they should about global warming and climate change, let's show what should be done. If healthcare is costing too much, let's show how you can reduce costs without harming people. If we're behind in supports to people who are leaving incarceration and returning to our villages and towns, let's do it the right way. And so I have a local agenda here, which is let's recover some sense of ambition about the state as a
we both ran on that, and I think it accounted.
It's right.
Oh, I think it's one reason we both attracted some support, but the system kind of screens out some of that on the way. Well, we need to wrap up, but I know we're both very grateful to you. Do you have a message you want to leave with, you know, the millions of people who are undoubtedly watching this show, who eventually will watch this show? These are folks who are drawn to the title and drawn to your leadership. And what advice would you like to give about what they should consider doing?
You know, they have to make their own choices, of course. Everybody, you decide. This issue, I guess we started with the thing that I really feel strongest about, which is the being in it together, the solidarity. You know, decide if your mental model of the community you want and the person you want to be is characterized by a sense of invitation and embrace of people you may not yet know or meet or ever meet, or whether you think it's okay just to say, what's in it for me? And what's in it for me got us to where we are right now in a very vicious climate, and it's not the route out. So I would just say, you know, inclusion is the watchword.
Well, that's a wonderful way to end. Don, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your ongoing leadership, and I hope that folks will continue to think about what they can do. Each person is valuable and influential in his or her own life.
And we're in this together. I think the solidarity, I love that word. I think together we can continue to have these types of discussions, and we need to have these discussions. We can't be afraid to embrace our differences in opinion, because ultimately we need to articulate the world we want to create in order to get there. So I just want to give a quick shout out to the Cambridge Innovation Center here at CIC Boston, 50 Milk Street, for letting us film in their beautiful lighthouse on the 20th floor with our skyline in the background. It's really appreciated. Their mission is to improve and enhance the world through innovation, really cure the world through innovation, and that really aligns with our values. So out there, to everyone listening and watching, we hope that you continue to engage us, throw out questions that you think we should be asking, because we want to continue to build and create the world we want together. So thank you.